Hello there, this is Gary A. Swaby, and you're now watching the Snowfall Aftermath. And today we will be reviewing Snowfall Season 3, Episode 7, and the title of the episode is Charnel House. And I am joined today by Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. How are you doing, Richard?
Doing good, Gary. What's up, listeners and viewers?
What's up, indeed? And yeah, so of course last week, that was a heck of an episode. A lot happened. In that last episode, it was pretty monumental. It's one of those things we're never gonna forget. So this episode was, of course, the aftermath. No pun intended, but it was the aftermath of last week's episode where Jerome was taken out. So yeah, there's some things that we have to talk about in this episode, and from here on, it looks like it's going to get pretty crazy. So we're going to go ahead and get into our takeaways in just a moment. But before that, please do remember to leave your comments. Very important. Let us know what you guys think of everything that's going on in the show, and anything that we say that you might have an opinion on, definitely leave your comments. Please also hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and also hit the bell icon. And big shouts to Raiwan, because I see that he started watching this season a bit later, and now he's catching up and he's still leaving comments. So I like to see that. That's real good. So shouts to him. But yeah, so whose turn is it to do takeaways? I forgot to check whose turn.
This week it's actually your turn to go first.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I am going first this week. So let me get to my takeaways. So first thing I wanted to kind of highlight is that what's great about this show is how it highlights the weight of every moment, and what it means to the story and to the characters. And of course, in this episode they spent a lot of time showing us how Jerome's death affected the characters, in particular Louie and Franklin. Like with Louie, we see she's very distraught. She's blaming Franklin. She's breaking down. She goes to, she's having nightmares. She wakes up. She goes to Scully. She's cursing out his people outside and everything, and then Scully kind of calms her down, and I really liked that moment because we know that Scully has experienced some tragic loss in the last season. So he was like the perfect character to comfort her in that moment, I think, and he could also, like, give his advice on how he deals with things, and how he stops himself from burning the house down and everything. Like, I believe he said, they won't let me and stuff, because they're still with me. So I like that. That was a nice touch. And then even we even see Franklin kind of having a nightmare or having a moment, in bed, and he wakes up and he's struggling to breathe, kind of having an anxiety attack, I guess. And Veronique is able to offer him some comfort in that moment. So yeah, I like that the show does this. Now I think there will be some that say it was a bit of a slow episode and they spent too much time doing this stuff, probably. And you could make an argument that, because it did take up a good chunk of the episode, on the aftermath of Jerome's death. But I feel like it was needed in this case because Jerome is such a big character in the show. So I feel like he does kind of deserve that time for the characters to kind of refocus and kind of grieve him a little bit. And then also, my assumption is that the rest of the season, like the next three episode, is gonna be crazy. Like that's my assumption. Like that it's about to get like nonstop mayhem at this point. And judging by the trailer, it looks like the next episode is going to be like very, very insane, like in terms of how much stuff happens. So I think it's it's okay that they kind of slowed it down a little bit and focused, honed in on these moments and the characters kind of, suffering from that loss. And then the funeral was a great scene. There was a very funny comment in the Facebook group that Richard and I are a part of, where somebody was saying it was like the it was like the Avengers for gangsters, because like you had the Jannard character coming back, like he's got a different name in this show, but it's Jannard from Power Force. And then you had the other dude, the uncle dude, I can't remember his name now, but he's from P Valley or something, the other guy.
Yeah, it's Uncle Clifford. Yeah, I
Uncle
noticed that as
Clifford.
soon. He was sitting right behind Louie, but he didn't have any.
Yeah.
He didn't say anything. But yeah, if you're a fan of these shows, you recognize the people that are in the show. So yeah, that was a nice little Easter egg.
Yeah. So so yeah, it was like the Avengers Endgame funeral scene after Tony Stark dies. Like, this is like the gangster Avengers assembling for the send off, for Jerome. And then you had Leon was there, Gustavo was there, Dion was there. A lot of different characters were there also. So it was a pretty good send off for the character and everything like that. So that was good to see. So yeah, that's my first take. So next up, and I believe Rich might have something to say about this too. But your boy Ruben, he's he's bouncing back. He's we see that he shows up at Gustavo's place, giving him another ultimatum, basically, like, in 48 hours this has to end. He wants to set up Teddy and everything. And of course, Gustavo's girlfriend was very distraught by it and everything, because he just shows up inside the house and stuff. Um, and yeah, it's like the reason this is hilarious, and Rich kind of brought this up earlier when we were talking about it, but it's hilarious because last week we see he like Ruben was kind of scared of Teddy, like, he was he seemed like he was kind of shook a little bit of Teddy. And up until that point where Teddy went to his apartment, he was kind of stalling, it seemed like he wasn't doing that much, like, and we was a bit like, what is he actually doing? He's not doing anything. Like, I thought he was trying to track down Teddy, and I thought he gave Gustavo 24 hours or something, like, but now he's just walking around and making coffee in his apartment and stuff, like just chilling, reading his magazines and stuff. Um, so yeah, like after Teddy, kind of shook him up last week. Now he's like back on his BS, I guess, and he's trying to get things moving, and take down Teddy again. And yeah, it's just interesting because now, like, is after seeing that Teddy kind of had him shook and kind of had the one up on him last week. It's like, how seriously can we take this guy now? Like, because now they kind of made Teddy seem like the most dangerous character. Ruben's credibility is kind of taking a hit now, because it's like, you let Teddy come and punk you basically. So why should we, why should we believe that this guy Ruben is gonna do anything to take out Teddy? And I do believe that he's going to be involved somehow. He is, because we see the trailer and we're going to talk about that later. So Ruben is going to do something, but yeah, it was just funny seeing that scene, because it's like Teddy just kind of took away his sting a little bit, so it's hard to take him seriously. But I guess he does need to help move the plot along, and his character does help to show the tight situation that Gustavo was in. He's in a very desperate kind of situation at the moment. And then, I guess Gustavo was like my third take as well, because I think that we might be seeing the last moments of this character now, because his girlfriend, she was basically saying, maybe we should go away and maybe you shouldn't know where we go. If I heard that correctly, she was saying like, I don't think you should know where we're gonna go and stuff, so that they stay safe. And so now I feel like he has nothing to lose and he's gonna be acting on impulse now. And I guess the fact that Franklin was the last person he went to, and he kind of told Franklin everything. He told him about the DEA and everything. Like he put all of his cards on the table. So that shows that he probably does trust Franklin the most and stuff. But yeah, I just feel like he's been the man in the middle this whole season. Like he's been the one that's kind of stuck between everyone, and I feel like his time is finally running out. So, these last 48 hours that Ruben has given him, I feel like they could actually be his last 48 hours, period. I feel like we are seeing, the end of his character. And it's unfortunate because he is a likable character and everything. He's a cool dude. Him and Franklin actually have a lot of history together. They've saved each other a lot and stuff. So, and he also has a lot of history with Teddy. So, very important character to the story. But yeah, I think that he like the next major death in the show is likely going to be him, possibly. So yeah, that's my final take. There is a lot more to say about this episode, but we're going to get to it in the discussion. But overall, it was a pretty straightforward episode. We know that it was pretty much all about, respecting the character Jerome. It was about his send off, his tribute and everything, and just seeing the aftermath of his death. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. And I'm going to hand it over to Richard now and give us your takeaways.
Okay, excellent takeaways as always, Gary. Let me start off by saying I do agree that this was a great episode of Snowfall. But as you and I discussed, I feel as though this episode was meant as a setup episode for episode eight, which we will see next week. I mean, essentially, Amin Joseph did an excellent job as Uncle Jerome, and they really wanted to respect that and show you how each character dealt with the aftermath of his death. So that's why the episode started with him getting sent to brought to the funeral home, and then the funeral actually happening at the end of the episode, which I think was an excellent bookend for the character. Um, but I do know some people are going to be complaining because they're going to say that this is too slow paced. I didn't have an issue with it because again, they had to highlight how everybody is dealing with this situation. As you mentioned, Louie is a complete wreck. She has all these different emotions. She does blame Franklin for his involvement in all of this. But then when she does visit her cousin later, she also questions what she did to contribute to this as well. But again, she remains consistent in saying that Franklin is at fault of all of this. So clearly, everyone has things that they're dealing with. We also do see that Franklin is dealing with it differently as well, because there is a scene that he has with Leon in this episode where Leon just like, oh, I can't believe he's gone. And then Franklin makes a comment and says, yeah, it's unfortunate, but this would have never happened if he broke away from us. And if you pay attention to that scene, you see Leon, like he looks at him like funny for a second after that, like he's a bit taken aback by what he just said. But yeah, I mean, it is a true point that, Jerome got caught up in basically doing whatever he can to make Louis happy. Louis was never happy. So this is what happens as a result. But I thought it was very important to point some of this stuff out. So I understand there are going to be some people that complain about the episode, but I'm just saying I don't have any issues with what they did because they wanted to honor and respect the memory of this other character, Uncle Jerome, who was so important to the show. But obviously, the story is not going to end well for all of these characters. So we'll see what happens. But I'm going to go ahead and start with my 3 quick takeaways. And I'm going to mention, first and foremost, you see my name on the screen. I am Ruben's motivation coach. All right. This character needed motivation because like Gary said, the last couple of weeks, Teddy has got the one up on him twice. He broke into Ruben's place to investigate, and then the week after that, he actually visited Ruben and basically threatened him. Said, "Hey, we can end this now peacefully, but if you continue, I will kill you." So to see him show up this week at Gustavo's place, and yeah, Gustavo was my first takeaway. I'm gonna just tell you right now, I wasn't in any way intimidated by Ruben whatsoever. I know he was talking. He was saying he first and foremost he comes to Gustavo and says, "I know you have a shipment of cocaine coming from Colombia in 2 days. I want you to take it to the warehouse, have Teddy show up, and then we'll arrest him from there." Okay. Now, Gustavo obviously is listening to him because he's worried and he's obviously shook because this guy broke into his house. But the thing is that, as you already said, Gary, they told us last week, we saw how, sad or shell shocked, no, not sad, shell shocked Ruben was and surprised that Teddy would show up to his place. So, I mean, I kind of feel like in this show, you see all of these different characters have different varying emotions in terms of how they're dealing with the situation. Franklin, again, he has a very different mindset where he doesn't try to show emotion, but then in this episode, he has that dream sequence and it's just a completely different character. Then he's like, oh, I don't know what's happening to me, so on and so forth. So, but they do that. And then again with Teddy, Teddy obviously is, he is disturbed by the fact that his father got killed and he's worried about Julia, etc. So you get to see his emotions as well. But each one of these characters, they have various sides to them as characters. And I think that was what they were trying to say with basically everything that they're trying to do with Ruben. But I'm just saying that I don't really consider Ruben a threat. To be quite honest, I personally want to see Teddy take out Ruben so now we can just get to Teddy versus Franklin because that is the main story that all of this is about anyway. So we'll see what happens. But keeping up with the takeaway about Gustavo, he does meet up with Franklin in this episode, and he does tell him that the DEA also wants Teddy. And he also tells Franklin about this whole thing with Ruben. So they have a very interesting conversation, and we do see that once the funeral is about to end, Franklin does tell Gustavo, come to the repast. I have some good news for you. Now, obviously, Franklin was able to get the money for Gustavo, but he told him that it was going to take a little bit longer to get the passports. I'm going to make a guess that he was able to get the passports, and that's what he has for Gustavo. But we have to wait until next week to see how that pans out. But he also tells Gustavo, I want Teddy now. So him and Gustavo are on the same page that if you're going to ever take out Teddy, this is it. It has to happen right now. So I'm very curious to see what happens next week because clearly this is an opportunity for him to really get closer to Teddy and do something to him. So we'll see how that comes together. My second takeaway from this episode is about Teddy. And we do see that when we see Teddy in this episode from the very beginning, he's visited by Julia. She does come over to his place. We find out that she is pregnant. And of course, she is surprised to see that Parissa is now with Teddy. But she does tell Teddy, once he tells her what's happening with Franklin, she tells Teddy, just give the money back to Franklin, which I have to say, I found that very interesting. I'm glad that she sees the reasoning in this. Of course, Teddy has the BS excuse that he can't do that. It's owned by the government, all this other stuff. But we do find out later, no, he wants to keep the money for himself, right? Obviously. He does tell Parissa the same thing. He tells her, this money is for us. But really, it's for him. He's the one that he wants to be the one that was right in this situation with how he dealt with Franklin. So that's why he's doing all this stuff. Very selfish mindset. But pretty much, Julia does tell him that. But then she also tells him, by you, basically, you're putting everybody in danger. So if you don't deal with this Franklin situation, I'm going to have to deal with the situation myself by means of public execution. Now, I'm very curious to know what that means because in my mind, I thought that meant that she would just expose him for who he really is. And that will prevent him from ever thinking he can get back in with the job that he currently is trying to go after. So I'm very curious to see what that means. And again, we know that Teddy is a very hard-headed character. So I kind of feel like by the time the season is over, we are going to get a chance to see what she means when she said public execution. So stay tuned for that. We'll see what happens. But pretty much at the end of this episode, Teddy does meet up with Louie finally, and he basically tells her that he wants Franklin. And then at that point, that's when Louie tells Teddy, "You and I have the same enemy," because she blames Franklin for what happened to Jerome. So pretty much after that conversation, I believe I did say last week, I would not be surprised if Louie did try to team up with Teddy to take out Franklin, and I think that's exactly what we're going to see in the next episode. But we'll get into that trailer discussion later. But the last takeaway, the final takeaway, again, this is really about the Franklin family. Again, like I mentioned, they had to take their time to show how the family was going to deal with all the stuff that happened with Jerome in this episode. Obviously they had the scene where, Franklin had to go tell his mom about what happened. Once again, excellent acting, excellent emotion by everybody in every scene having to do with talking about Jerome and then how they dealt with that situation afterwards. But he does tell her what happened. She does see the body. She's angry about that. But eventually in this episode, she does go to Louie and basically try to squash the beef that they had, because we all know that when this show started, she didn't really like Louie. And that relationship pretty much remained the same. They remained cordial because of Jerome, but now that Jerome is no longer there, she didn't really like her too much, but she still showed care and compassion for her and tried to have a conversation with her in this episode. And again, like she told Teddy, she blames Franklin for all of this. She does not want to take accountability for what she did in any of this. And even Cissy says all of our hands are dirty to a degree. So it's not just on one person, but Louie fails to see that. And of course, as the episode goes on, like you mentioned, Gary, she does visit Scully. She does talk with him. She also visits her cousin, trying to really figure out a way to deal with the situation. Now, what one thing I do want to mention to stay with the Franklin family is that we do have a little bit of a story happening with Leon in this episode as well, in the fact that he is making the decision to stay in the projects, whereas Wanda wants to move out of the projects and has already started the process of moving out. And I believe Cissy does offer her an apartment, and she also offers her a job at the shelter. Now, obviously, she didn't say yes to the shelter job quite yet, but the fact that Cissy would even say that to her, I think that's kind of a red flag to say maybe Cissy might not make it to the end of the show. Maybe she is going to get killed as a casualty of this whole thing between Teddy and Franklin. That's something that we've been talking about since this show started this season. So I don't know, but it kind of makes me think something's up with her if she feels so compelled to say, I'll leave all that behind, because she doesn't really have a definitive answer as to where she can go from here. So we have to stay tuned for that. But the last thing I will mention, again, when we do see after like I said earlier, Louie does talk to Teddy. Louie obviously is still angry with Franklin, wants to get revenge on Franklin. And I did think it was interesting how at the funeral, you do see Buckley again show up, give his condolences, and then he basically lies to Louie because she asked him, "Did Jerome page you and try to contact you when they were trying to rescue me?" He says no. Obviously, the character was getting high, so maybe he doesn't remember that, but I'm pretty sure he saw that page at some point, so he did lie to her. So I want to see what happens to Buckley moving forward. Is this character going to eventually get taken out as well? I have no idea. Maybe the drugs is what eventually does him in. We'll have to wait and see. But overall, by the end of this episode, Louie does talk with Franklin one more time. And she does tell Franklin, yeah, I know. She asked him, why did you come back? He said, hey, well, I wanted to do the right thing. I was raised to respect women. And also, you made a promise to me that you would help me get Teddy, and I need all the help I can get. Then she says that line, Franklin, you're the devil. And he says, oh, yeah, I know I'm the devil. But again, he's willing to do whatever he can do to get his hands on Teddy. So overall, I thought this was an excellent episode. But like I said, I think the point of this episode was to, number one, honor Jerome's memory. And then number two, set up what happens in the next episode. So I definitely, like you, Gary, am expecting a ton of action, a ton of tension in the next episode next week, and I would say for the rest of the season. And by the way, Ahmed Joseph is directing the next episode, so that will be very interesting to see what he brings to the table as far as this being the first episode that he's directed. So stay tuned for that. But overall, great episode. Can't wait to see what happens next.
Excellent takeaways. Yeah, you mentioned so many things that yeah, I have something to say about it also, but we'll get to it in the questions and discussions. But so wait, as for Armin Joseph, he didn't direct this one, right? Like this episode 7?
No.
Because
He said it's episode 608. So that the next episode is
okay.
the one he directed. Yeah.
Okay, because I thought someone said he directed this one, so that confused me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what that next episode and how that turns out. But yeah, great takeaways, great observations, and so I will just real quick before we get to the discussions, what you said about Cissy. Um, yeah, I'm wondering like what she's got in her mind. I mean, I'm sure that seeing Jerome dead and everything probably hit her hard and made her think, you know what, I'm just done with everything. But I was also thinking a little bit if she's past the point of no return to where she wants to direct her anger at Teddy and maybe do something impulsive, because we remember you remember this the speech she gave to Franklin in, I believe, the first episode or the second, where she was
Yep.
trying to get him to meet with Ruben, and she
Mhm.
seemed pretty determined to take out Teddy. And I think that she believes he is the root cause of all of this. Like he is the one that kind of put them in this position. And of course, she does tell Louis that they all have a little part of the blame. They have to share the blame because they all did certain things. But I think that she believes Teddy is like the number one reason, because if you think about it, he betrayed Franklin and decided to work with Louis, and he made all of that possible, and that set off the beef in the family and stuff like that. So I think she's either going to try and step away completely, or she might be thinking, I want to end all of this and just take Teddy down. So I want to see what route she goes, like what pathway she takes. But yeah, excellent point though, bringing that up. And I do have another question about that later that might relate to that. And then also, what you said about Buckley, and I have a question specifically about that too. But before we
Yeah.
get to the questions and discussions, quick reminder to the people: leave your comments, let us know what you're thinking, and hit the like button. That's very important. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell. You can also check out the Koalition Entertainment channel and find more entertainment related content about movies, TV shows, everything like that. And then we have the Koalition Gaming if you are into gaming, and we're going to be doing a lot more over there very soon as some of the big industry events start coming up, like E3 and games Summer Games Fest. So definitely check out those other channels. But yeah, so let's get right into the questions and discussions then, because the very first one I have is about Louis, and you kind of brought that up a little bit. You talked about what she might do next. So the question is basically, who is Louis going to choose to help? Because we see that she talks to Teddy and she talks to Franklin. So before the funeral, she has a conversation with Teddy, and she makes it clear that she's very angry at Franklin and everything. And yeah, she basically tells him that he's willing to help her out after the funeral, once she lays her husband to rest, and then she's gonna go all in on helping him basically. But then the funeral happens, and funerals, they kind of have this effect where they can bring families closer together, based on the person that has passed away and stuff. Like sometimes it brings that family closer together. It can sometimes help people mend their problems, but it could also create more problems too. You know, there are a lot of families who end up, you know, having deeper animosity towards each other after funerals. So in this case, you know, the conversation between Louie and Franklin, considering that she spent most of this episode blaming him, it was a pretty calm conversation. And it was one of those moments from Franklin where, you know, he comes across as very savage as well, where he, you know, she says, "You're the devil." And he said, "Yes." He basically says, "Yes, I am." Um, but you know, he basically because last week when she was in the warehouse and she offered him Teddy, he was basically like, "No, I've already got a plan." But now, you know, after this episode, the whole situation's kind of changed because now he knows the DEA is onto Teddy, and you know, Ruben has given Gustavo 48 hours. You know, so he has to help him out with that situation. So now, you know, things have kind of changed a little bit. The situation's changed, and he could actually use her help. So, Rich, you know, who is she going to end up helping? And you know, we do see the trailer. We are going to talk about the trailer more. But there, in my opinion, there's various ways you can interpret that trailer. You know, it could be one of many ways, you know, that it goes based on that. So let me know what you think Louis might end up doing.
Well, I think that Louis is still conflicted. Obviously, like you said, the trailer can be interpreted many different ways. But if I had to make a guess, I would say that she basically is going to try and set up Franklin. Now, we'll talk in a little bit more detail about the trailer a little bit later, but based on some stuff I saw in that trailer, I believe that Louis is going to basically kidnap Franklin and obviously beat him down because we saw her throwing a couple of hooks at Franklin in the trailer. You see the back of his head, so I would assume he's getting beat down by her and whoever else is helping her. But I kind of feel like when it comes to the point of dealing with Teddy, I feel like Louis is just angry about all of it. Like she wants to get payback on Franklin, but I also would say she possibly wants to get payback on Teddy as well. So I could see a situation where if Teddy does show up, she has the opportunity to take him out after Franklin is dealt with. Then she would do that too, because I kind of feel like she is at this point where she doesn't really care. She doesn't have anybody. You know, when she has that conversation with Cissy, she says, "I have no one. So I don't really care what I do now." And that is the beef thing. The thing about it is that even though her and Cissy had they were able to have a conversation in this episode, I really don't feel like she would spare Franklin. Because again, Cissy does say, yeah, all Cissy has is her son right now, right? I really don't think she cares about that. So if Louis has the opportunity to kill Franklin, she's going to take that opportunity. But again, the whole thing about the thing that makes it an interesting situation is that we have to remember that when Franklin was talking about, "You sure you want to work with Teddy?" He warned Louis that Teddy was going to treat her the exact same way because again, she has to answer to him. He's the one that's in charge with all this stuff now, right? So, and we saw that when they were talking in this episode where she was like talking back with him. She says, "Hey, this is not a request. I need to meet up with you now." And of course, she did it right away. But my whole thing is that I think if she has more conversations with Teddy and they start to go off the rails, then she would definitely not hesitate taking him out as well. Because again, he is the cause of all of this. And when he acts surprised when Louis basically told her that somebody stole Franklin's money, he acts surprised. "Oh, what happened? I don't know how that happened." So I kind of feel like she can see through him a little bit, but she's playing along and she's going to get what she wants. And I think because Louis is selfish and has nothing to lose, she wants to take out Franklin. If she can take out Teddy afterwards, she'll consider doing that. But I kind of feel like maybe she's going to play both sides. But based on that trailer, it looks like she wants the Franklin dead. So that's why I said we have to see how it plays out. But if I was to make a guess, I think she's definitely going to be looking at this from the perspective of Franklin needs to pay because he was involved in what happened to Jerome. So I'm going to prioritize that over, taking out Teddy. That's just what my thought is, but I would love to see if it goes in a different direction. But we'll see.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I don't know which way exactly it's gonna go, but what you said definitely makes sense. Now the trailer, like it, I don't know, it makes it look one way, but it could be another because, like, obviously she hits him, um, but we do know that Franklin has a plan. So it's like, what is his plan? And so I'm wondering if because Franklin says something interesting to Gustavo. I can't remember the exact quote, but he was basically saying like, I'm the bird that Teddy's trying to catch or whatever, something to that extent. Like like he's looking for me. So he could use that with Louie, and he knows that Teddy is looking for him because he killed his father, and he's also looking for Teddy. So he could try and use that to as his leverage and be like, he can have Louie set it up to where she says that she's caught Franklin, and maybe maybe she uses Buckley to help her with that. And then I feel like maybe that the plan doesn't go quite to plan, because then maybe there's a reason for Louis to kind of change her mind and then decide that she wants to rough up Franklin and let him die, basically. Maybe she acts like she's going along with Franklin's plan, but then she changes her mind and then kind of leaves his fate up to Teddy or something of that nature. So yeah, I don't know. There's many ways they could do it. They could go because I guess it would seem a bit unrealistic if Louis just decides to help Franklin and that's it, and decides to go fully on his side. So I do think that there is going to be, and obviously we see her punching him, so there is going to be a moment where she she lets out her frustration on him and harms him, brings physical harm to him. So she is going to have her moment of taking it out on Franklin. So yeah, I don't know how it's going to happen exactly, but what you said makes sense. That she will try to let she will give up Franklin to Teddy. That makes sense. But I just feel like there's going to be more to the story based on what's happening in the trailer, and we can talk about that in a bit more detail once we get to the trailer. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I can't wait for the next episode. Like I feel like that's going to be up there as well as one of the good episodes. But so speaking of Buckley, you mentioned the lie that he told. And I do feel like, I feel like Louis registered that in her mind when he said it, that he didn't get the page and everything. Because didn't was it Scully or someone? I think someone mentioned that they tried to get a hold of Buckley. I don't know if it was
Jerome.
Franklin or Jerome.
Jerome did because they had a
Okay.
scene where he sent the page to him, and then that was when they showed he got high. He was getting high.
Yeah, I know Jerome is the one that sent the page, but didn't, like, after the whole thing happened and Jerome died, did somebody else mention that they tried to get Buckley? Or am I
Yeah,
bugging?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it was someone else that mentioned. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I'm not. I don't.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure who that was. I forget who it was. It might have been somebody you already mentioned though. But the main thing is that I know he wasn't going to be available because this guy was getting high.
Yeah. So like if Louis knows that they tried to get a hold of Buckley and then he lied to her, I think she registered it in her mind already that, he needs to go, or, that he is partly to blame or whatever. So I feel like she might try to use him to help, to get Franklin in the next episode or whatever. But then I feel like she might actually end up turning on him or taking him out or something, like, or killing him herself. And there is that shot where she's holding the gun at someone. It could even be Buckley. Like, I know we assume it's Franklin, but it could be Buckley. And I mean, when she's outside holding the gun, like face down at someone, that could end up being Buckley. Who knows? But yeah, so the question is, like, do you think she's going to get rid of Buckley, basically? Do you think that this character is about to get taken out?
I mean, as a fan of Jerome, and the fact that he did not want to help Jerome, I kind of want to see the character get taken out. The other thing we have to remember is that in the previous seasons, they made it very clear that Buckley and Jerome do not get along, and they did not like each other. So, I mean, I kind of feel like if he wasn't getting high at that moment and he decided not to answer the page, that also makes sense because he doesn't like Jerome, right? So I get that. But to answer the question, do I think that the character is going to eventually get taken out? I kind of feel like he may take himself out by basically ODing from doing all the drugs. I mean, that's a possibility, right? Because we know what happened to the character. They showed in that episode last season how he lost his job, he lost his family, all this other stuff that he lost as a result of all the stuff that went down because things didn't go to plan with Kane, and another guy on the force ended up getting killed. So it makes sense to me that the character should go down, but it's a question of how is it going to happen. Like I feel he is already an addict, so I could see him getting taken out, him taking himself out, or I could see Louie taking him out. And then again, there's some people out there that will argue that while they like the Jerome character, they do not like the fact that he killed Black Diamond the way he did. So I know there are some people that they kind of felt like he got what he deserved when he got killed. I know the general consensus is that you feel sorry for the character, but when you consider that there's another side to that argument as well, in the fact that yes, he did take out Black Diamond. That was an unnecessary beatdown. So the fact that now Buckley wasn't available to assist him and help Louie, that kind of makes sense in my opinion, because it's what goes around comes around, I guess you could say. But to answer the question, I would not mind seeing Buckley get killed by Louie, because again, he's of no use to her now. Everything is crumbling around her, so there is no need to even have him on the payroll if she still is paying him to do anything. So I would get rid of him. But I also feel like he's probably going to take his own self out if he continues getting high like he was in that previous episode. So, but either way, I think his time is up by the time the show is over. Either he will die or he will get killed, I think, in the next couple episodes. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. And another reason, like, I think he definitely has to get taken out is because of his cop connection, like, because he used to be a cop and everything. And if Louie is going to get out the game, she can't just have him walking around knowing so much, when he has friends in the police force. So I think it makes sense to take the character out, especially since he did mess up, with this Jerome thing. Go ahead.
That is an excellent observation. You are 100% on point with that. I also was going to say there are some people out there that actually enjoyed the Kane character. Kane never got his revenge on Buckley, so I'm pretty sure that both Kane and Jerome fans will be happy if they see this character get killed. So I agree with you 100%, and it makes sense. The cop connection makes sense. So hopefully that is what happens to him in the next couple episodes. Maybe the next episode, as you predicted.
Yeah. I kind of feel like we at this point we've got to see a bloodbath at this point. Like, people got to die every episode, like, because we're getting to the finale, and there's still a lot of things to kind of wrap up. There's a lot of loose threads still. So I definitely feel like Buckley's time is coming, but it's just a matter of who is gonna pull the trigger. Is it gonna be Louie? Because as much as Louie is upset right now and everything, and she's kind of at her limit. She is just one person, and she's a woman, so obviously other people have an advantage over her and stuff like that, physically. So is she going to be able to possibly go after Franklin and Buckley and everything? Like, is a big task for her. So I feel like she's going to enlist some help, maybe. Maybe she'll have some people to help her out, maybe Dion or something. So
Well,
we'll see.
actually, since you made a comment about that,
Oh,
I'm going to make a comment about this.
mhm.
In that trailer, they show a scene of Louie basically, she and another person has Franklin. They have him tied up. They're taking him into this warehouse. When I pause the video, it looks to me, the overhead view, that looks to me like Scully.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah,
Now,
Scully.
and the reason why I want to mention that is because they did have a scene in this episode at the funeral where they basically was standing by. They had Jerome, they had the access thing where you had to basically wait till they gave you access, and then they looked at him. He looked at them a funny way when he came up to them.
Yeah.
So I think that, coupled with the fact that what Louis told him in this episode, tells you that Scully, he can obviously he's a peaceful man now, but I kind of feel like if pushed, he can once again go off the rails and get the revenge that he wants to get. Obviously Leon has decided that he's still going to stay in the projects, right? So what is really the reason for him to stay in the projects? Then this is not to build, as he said, this is to build up the community, so on and so forth. But really, Leon is about that life, because you saw how he beat down Dion in the previous episode. So I kind of feel like he has his own selfish reasons for wanting to stay there. And I kind of feel like that is, again, connected to the fact that he's still staying there. And again, Scully, he said that he was mad as hell some days when he thinks about what happened to his daughter and his girlfriend. So I kind of feel like that's by design that they put that stuff in there. I wouldn't be surprised if he does get the mindset to retaliate. Now, obviously, we need to see what happens in the next episode, because I feel like if he is helping Louie and something happens while he's helping her, then he may want to do some type of damage. So we have to wait and see what happens. But when I watch that trailer over again, it looks like that's Scully helping her. Now, I don't know. Now, the people who like to leave comments, and of course, shout out to all of you, because you're very intelligent as far as knowing a lot of stuff about this show. Definitely let us know who you think that was in the trailer and what you think they're trying to say in that trailer. But it looks to me like that is Scully helping her out, as far as all this is concerned. But we'll have to wait and see next week.
No, yeah, you're right. I think that is Scully, yeah. And that makes sense if he is the one that ends up helping her out. Um and yeah, because I do kind of feel like she needs somebody helping her to actually get, Franklin. It does look like somebody's like, moving Franklin around and stuff, carrying him and stuff. So yeah, I think that could definitely be Scully. And that it would make sense coming off of the conversation they had and the fact that he comforted her and stuff like that. So yeah, uh good point there. So um all right, I might just get to the trailer because a lot of these questions are going to be answered, but it's going to tie into the trailer anyway. Okay, one more before we get to the trailer, right? So we do get that small interaction between Leon and Dion at the funeral. So like, do you think they've kind of squashed it now and put aside their differences, and could you maybe see them working together, or maybe Leon did say something about he needs to kind of get someone who can replace him, so that he can work on some of the plans that him and Wanda had together. Could he, maybe have a sit down with Dion and try and reason with him and show him the right way to do things or whatever, or does he have somebody else in mind of who he would like to replace him? What would you see as the future for these characters, basically, for Leon and Dion?
Well, first and foremost, let's give a special shout out to JB. He left a lot of comments last week, and he actually said a lot of things that I agree with, because he said that if you pay attention to what they're doing with Leon on the show right now, it looks as though Leon might be getting arrested by the end of the season. Now, the cops, like he made a very good observation, the cops have not shown up yet in the projects this season. So, yeah, I can see that happening, obviously. But to answer your question, I think that I don't think that Leon and Dion, they're going to really have anything. I don't think they're going to work together on anything right now. I think mainly he basically asked Leon, "Did y'all get the guy that killed Jerome?" And Leon nodded his head to say yes, and that was it. So I don't think that he's going to in any way work with him anymore. Um, I don't think they. I don't know if I would say that the beef is squashed, but I kind of feel like he's off doing something else totally different. I'll be very curious to see if they interact again in the future. I have no idea. But my thought is that as far as what's happening with those two characters, is that Leon has made the decision to stay in the projects. It feels as though he has to take this over. And that whole speech he gave Wanda about passing it on, just like Wanda, I don't believe anything he said when he said that. Because again, he is about that life. He liked getting out there, fighting, and all this other type of stuff. And obviously, when you think about it, he's trying to rebuild the community. But how is he going to do that when they're still selling products? I mean, they're talking about, oh, there's a certain way you have to do things, but you're still selling product that is contributing to destroying the community. So how are you really helping? You see, these are the questions that he should be asking himself. How can he really help? So I don't really, because they haven't really shown us what he has done yet. They just showed us so far that he stayed behind. So we need to actually see what his plan is to actually rebuild the community, which we haven't seen yet. Yes, they did replace the street lights after they got shot out, but what else is he doing beyond that? We haven't really seen that yet. So I kind of feel like we have to wait to see what Leon is going to do next. But as far as him and Dion, I don't think they have anything else that they're going to do with those two characters. Because it feels like if Dion was going to retaliate, that probably should have happened, or he should have attempted. And he had a moment to do something as well. Obviously, he didn't want to do nothing in this episode out of respect for Jerome and the situation of it being his funeral. But I kind of feel like if he's going to retaliate, it would have already happened. So, I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. We'll have to wait and see what happens in next week, because I think we'll get more answers. But yeah, I for right now, I think the Leon character is just doing what he can to, as he said, rebuild the community. But we need to actually see what he's actually doing besides talking to different people there about what's happening. That's it. So we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of think that because Franklin always seems to kind of lean on Leon a little bit. Like sometimes he'll ask him for a favor. So I kind of feel like Leon and the project people, they might end up getting led into this warfare between Franklin and Teddy, into this conflict. They might end up being a part of it because anytime Franklin might need some extra soldiers, he might go to Leon and ask for help. So that could end up affecting Leon and the others, and it'd be even worse if Leon were to maybe get taken out, like this,
Yep.
like helping Franklin. So
I think you make an excellent observation. And again, we do know that Scully, well, what we've seen in the trailer, we believe that Scully is helping Louie. So if Franklin somehow asks Leon for help, and Leon happens to show up to try to help him, now he sees Scully. These two already have a history together, so it's not a good situation for him. Um, but yeah, I mean, one thing I do want to say though, and I guess this is a question for you as well as the people that enjoy watching this show. Do y'all believe that Leon made a wise decision to decide to stay in the projects while you have Wanda basically moving somewhere else? Because I think that right there tells you his story is not going to end well, because there is no reason whatsoever for him to stay there. especially after you see what happened to Jerome. That should be a sign to everybody. Okay, if I'm out the game, I need to get out the game and do something else right now. But he said no, I'm going to stay here. So I want to know if you think he made a wise decision, as well as the commenters. What do y'all think?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, I don't believe he did make a good decision at all. That was totally the wrong decision because if you look at it, right, they went all the way to Africa together. They got married. You know, she got clean and everything. And they had all this inspiration of, and this vision of what they wanted to do when they returned and everything. And he's 100% going against that at this moment. And you either have to stand for something or fall for anything. And he is not standing for what they talked about. He's not living up to it at all. And his whole thing was, oh, I need to be the leader in the hood, because if I'm not, it's going to be someone else. And like, it could go, so many things could go wrong. So I guess that was his logic for taking that leadership role and everything, because then at least he can control things. But the longer you continue living that life, the longer the more harder it gets for you to leave it. And it's only going to be a matter of time before something extreme happens that's going to cost you your life or make it so that you can't leave ever. So yeah, he made the wrong decision. He should have left with Wanda, because the thing is, like, the shelter as well is like the perfect method of helping people. If your whole vision was about helping people, showing them another way, and potentially helping them to travel to Africa and other places, then that would have been the perfect start to that vision, to that mission that they had. So he could go and run that with her if he wanted to, but he's choosing to stay there. And it doesn't take that long to find a replacement. You could just select literally anyone who's at the PJs at the moment, who knows how to hustle. Because the thing is, it's never going to stop. Like, the drug game is always going to be there, because there's always going to be people who want drugs, and there's always going to be people selling it. So unfortunately, it's not going to go away. So you can't really make any change there. But what you can do is go to the shelter and help the people who have chosen not to be part of that life, who are struggling and who need help. And all the victims of the drug game, you can help them by being at the shelter. So yeah, he's making the wrong choice to stay there, for sure. And as this war between Franklin and Teddy continues, it's only going to make Franklin more desperate and ask him for more favors. So it's going to put him in danger. So
I agree.
So yeah.
And he did ask him for money in this episode, so he doesn't know when he can get it back to him. So yeah, so it's looking very, very rocky at the moment.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely want to get more opinions on that, in the comments. So let us know what you think of that, because that was a great question from Richard. But let's get to the trailer now. So in this trailer for episode 8, we see that he's kind of pleading with Veronique to leave the country. He's desperately telling her she needs to leave. We see that Louie is holding up a gun to someone. Franklin's all tied up. We see a shot of Franklin walking with Ruben. And then we see Teddy saying he'll be watching. He's receiving a phone call or something, and he says he'll be watching. Then we see Gus, and he says something like, "These men are wolves. One sniff, and we're both dead." And then we see, we hear Franklin. He says something like, "We've got 24 hours." And then we see Louie punching Franklin, and we see that Franklin is all tied up and everything on the ground, and there's a car pulling up. And yeah. There might be some things that I missed, but yeah, it was a well-edited trailer as usual. And yeah, I think we can all tell that next week's episode is going to be pretty intense, pretty crazy. So, Rich, what do you make of this trailer? Like, what are the standout things we should be looking at here?
Well, just like you mentioned, Franklin basically telling Veronique that she needs to get away. Um, so obviously, and you saw a little bit of that in this episode. She had some hesitancy and doubting that. Say, okay, maybe my mom was right about Franklin, because when he had that whole dream sequence, she looked very uncomfortable. She said, "Oh, we have a plan, though. We have a plan." And then Franklin told her, "Hey, something's wrong with me. Something is definitely wrong with me." So that tells you that he has a lot of doubts. But again, Damson Idris does a good job of showing you different types of varying emotions of the character. Because when I saw that scene, I mean, I did laugh a little bit. I'm like, well, what the hell is going on with Franklin? When he had that reaction, it's like, oh, I can't breathe. I was like, wow, that's I kind of laughed a little bit at that. But this guy is going through a crisis. But pretty much, he does tell her in that trailer that she needs to go away now. So that makes me wonder if she is going to eventually try to contact her mom. Say, yeah, you was right. I'll just go away with you somewhere. And we do know that as JB commented, there's definitely a twist still coming with Veronique, I think, because it's clear now that clearly Franklin has some issues. He is unraveling. So she has to be prepared for whatever happens next for the sake of her child, their child together. But really, if something happens to Franklin, that she has to take care of the child. So I'm curious to see what that means. Um, as for other stuff in the trailer, you already mentioned that Louie and Scully look like they have kidnapped Franklin, and Franklin is getting beat down by Louie. A lot of other stuff is happening. One line you did say about Gustavo in the Wolves line. I'm very curious as to who he is referring to, because I think, based on what I have seen in this season, he's talking about Teddy and Ruben, because obviously he's shook by what Ruben did to by the fact that he just showed up at his place unannounced, and obviously he knows what Teddy is capable of as well. But in terms of Franklin, also, he knows that Franklin is on a warpath now and is very unhinged. So he could also be talking about Franklin as well. But that's why I say he looks very intense in that trailer. Looks as though something may happen to him in that trailer just because of how they shot it, the way he was reacting to certain things. Some type of confrontation with him is going to happen in that next episode. And we do see the DEA people that were on that guy Tom's team. I'm going to say Tony's team. Some of those people are probably going to get killed, because if you recall, the original plan was that they were all supposed to go to that warehouse at the same time. So that right there means something is going to happen at that warehouse. And the last point that I will make is that we did see a bit of a car collision. There were like these two cars riding, hitting each other. I don't know who's in those cars, but one of those cars showed up when Franklin was there tied up. So I would imagine, I don't know who's in those cars. It could be Teddy, it could be Gustavo. But obviously it's two people trying to take each other out. So I'm curious to see what that is. But yeah, next week, a lot of action, a lot of intensity. So I don't believe there will be any complaints next week about whatever happens in that episode, because there's a lot happening in that trailer right now, and obviously, I think they're going to make use of the time well. So we have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the cars because that definitely looks very intense. So it kind of looks like one of Teddy's got to be in one of those cars, and he's probably on his way to Franklin. And I'm just wondering who is the other car, because I think it could either be Gustavo or Ruben. So
Yeah, well,
yeah,
let me just say this right now. I don't mind seeing Ruben getting taken out by Teddy, because again, like I said earlier, this guy has shown you how he is when he's around Teddy is completely different than how he is when he's around Gustavo. And I kind of feel like Teddy is not intimidated either. He is a desperate man just as much as Franklin is desperate. So if he has to take out somebody that's in his way, he will do that. So I believe you are right, because he already warned Ruben. So it makes sense for them now to have a violent back and forth, I would think. And again, that this is episode 8 next week. So after that, there's only 2 episodes left. So I do agree it's about time for them to have their violent showdown. So maybe that's what happens next week or the week after. But yeah, that's a very good point that he's probably in one of those cars, and Ruben could be the one that's going after him.
Yeah, definitely. And and we know that Franklin has a plan, in his mind. It seems like his plan doesn't go how he wants because of Louis. But whatever plan he had, he was probably setting it up still. So because the whole thing is they wanted to throw off the DEA for
Mm-hmm.
another day and buy Gustavo some time. So he probably would have put some sort of plans in place. So like I don't know how. I'm sure that's all going to tie into that scene somehow. And I don't know if maybe when Gustavo was talking about the wolves, was he talking to the DEA or something? I don't know.
Mm.
But we also have the scene where Franklin is with Ruben. So we know that those two characters are going to be talking, and I wonder what that conversation is going to be about because maybe he tries to use Ruben as a failsafe or as a backup plan or something, and that's why I think it could even be Ruben in that car. So uh, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, great points. It looks like one thing I was thinking, when I was watching this is because you have Franklin tied up in the warehouse and you have Louis hitting him, and it's like it's almost like a callback to what happened with her in her situation when she was tied up in the warehouse. So it's like they're kind of playing off of that. So like now it's Franklin's turn to be in the hot seat. What
That's
was you gonna
exactly
say?
what that's exactly what it is because they do
Yeah.
show that she is like looks as though she's going to torture Franklin. Maybe if you look at that trailer, so that's possible. One other thing I do want to mention though, when you made the comment that Ruben and Franklin are in this episode, that actually is taken from when they met earlier in the season. So I think they purposely put some shots in there to throw some stuff off and make you think certain things are a little bit different. But that doesn't mean they're not going to interact in the next episode. But that shot was clearly when they met in the museum. So it's very interesting they will throw stuff like that in there because they don't want to reveal too much. And I'm gonna make a guess right now. When it gets to the season finale, they probably will show us nothing in that trailer about the actual with the serious finale. They won't show us anything. They'll just show you shots of what happened before and say something like it's all leading up to this moment, and then that's it. But I can see that happening for sure because they don't want to show you too much. But that's just an observation I made.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, because
Yeah,
the trailers are like so quick, so I didn't even catch that was old footage. But
yeah.
that's interesting because they must have put that in there for a reason. So like
Hmm.
they're trying to throw us off somehow. Um, but yeah, that's interesting. So maybe he doesn't talk to Ruben. Maybe he does. Who knows? But
But
yeah, go ahead.
the one final thing I will mention though is that we do know that Franklin and Gustavo have a plan because Gustavo is basically telling Franklin, if you're going to take out Teddy, now is the time. And if you notice, that time, they're talking about doing this before all this other stuff comes up, so that then Franklin could basically say that he was framed by Teddy. So because of that, that's why I say they probably are going to have a plan. And as you said, it will not go according to plan because something is going to happen that prevents that plan from going through. That so that, like you said earlier, that could mean that Gustavo gets killed in the next episode. But again, we have to see because I don't know for sure what's going to happen. We do know that they've been talking, obviously, and at the end of this episode, he did tell him that they can meet at the repast to talk further. So clearly, they have a plan, but we know it will not work out the way that they anticipate. So I just want to see what actually happens as a result of this plan. So stay tuned.
Mm. Yeah, I really can't wait to see. But yeah, make sure you guys leave us some predictions in the comments because JB, Inga, you guys usually have great predictions on things. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to say on it. Um, but yeah, uh, I guess that's it. Is there anything else in particular you wanted to bring up about the episode or the trailer before we end off?
Oh no, fantastic season so far. I think that next week is going to be a very memorable episode. So stay tuned. We definitely will talk about that for sure. But yeah, so far I'm enjoying the show. Like I said last week, it's sad that it is coming to an end. Obviously, there may be a spinoff in the works. We'll talk about that in the future because there isn't really a lot of information about that spinoff quite yet, But I think we'll have a better idea on what that is by the time the season ends. So stay tuned for that. But overall, great show. Can't wait to see what happens next week because a lot of things are going to pop off for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, there was that rumor of the spin-off too, but things are it's not like 100% confirmed. Like a lot of the details are rumored at the moment, but once things are more confirmed and everything, we will probably have, a discussion on that. A more detailed discussion and everything about what that could be and what to expect from it. But yeah, that would be great to have more Snowfall related content in the future after this show. But as for now, that is going to be it for this week. I look forward to everybody letting us know what they think in the comments. Thank you all for the views and all the comments on the last episode. We very much enjoyed it, and appreciate all of your interactions and engagements. So thank you all for listening and supporting the show. Definitely check out some of the other content. But until next week, take care of yourselves, and we will see you soon. Peace out.